Kia ora koutou. Hello to everybody. Good to see everyone together. It's like pretty exciting. I think Warren mentioned yesterday that there's been a couple of community enterprise get-togethers over the years in Kaitaia, and it's always really stimulating to get people together who are looking to make some radical change around the place, which is what we require, some radical change. Just like to congratulate Di and for actually putting it together. This is coming out of council, that they've actually said, hey, we've got to just start looking at different ways of doing things. There's nothing fixed. We haven't sorted anything out. We haven't solved any problems, and we won't here in these 2 days. But the key is to start, and I think that at the end of the day, we've started. So congratulations, Di, Ken, Gary, and all the crew from council have put this all together to actually make it happen. So crucial that we do. It's really exciting. It's refreshing that we're actually starting to talk about alternative ways of economics. So, well done, everybody. We really appreciate you putting it together. I suppose the whole concept that Shona's been talking about, community enterprise, is dear to our hearts. Like CBEC is a community enterprise, part of the social enterprise concept. I very clearly draw the line between social enterprise and community enterprise, because there is a subtle difference, and one can be privately owned or group owned, whereas community, which is social enterprise, whereas community enterprise is only there for one purpose. It's to do things in the community for community benefit, and everything that we make out of that exercise goes 100% back into our community. So there's a subtle difference, but the important thing is social enterprise, community enterprise. It's addressing some of our major problems that we face now and into the future. So I suppose when CBEC got together to start doing the things we're doing, we were very keen that we were just part of the puzzle, having a really healthy private sector, having a really healthy public sector, and a community sector that was flourishing is crucial. If you don't have all three doing well, then you don't have a healthy community. So we set out to support our local businesses in town, as well as set up new activities in town that grew our local economy. So really interested to hear, have Shona here, because I was very fortunate last year. I was able to go to the United Kingdom and look at some of the models over there of community enterprise. I looked mainly at the networks rather than the specific activities or organisations, and I was blown away with how much activity out there in the UK. And to be honest, after travelling through England, Ireland and Scotland, those amazing examples everywhere, the Scottish model is the model for New Zealand. I came back to New Zealand going, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. The model for community enterprise growth in New Zealand is right there. It's got the system, it knows what it costs. It's had massive growth in the last 10 years. Gone from a very small, number of people who were collectively working together as networks to a massive organisation running through a group of people and networks working through the whole Scottish system. So it can be done. It's now a serious part of the Scots economy, and a lot of it's happened in places where nothing else was working. And I think that's the key thing. Away from the mic? Sorry. Yeah, so it's happened in places, whether it's an urban situation or a rural situation, where the system was struggling to initiate improvements and growth and activity. So we have a model. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just need to make sure that Shona stays with the New Zealand giving, and keeps bringing those good ideas. The other thing I learnt from being there was, how big can we get community enterprise? And there is no limit. The number of organisations is massive over there. They've got some of the networks I was working with are actually being seconded to government, to the British government, for 3-6 month periods to give them advice on how to develop their communities. Serious stuff where they become the senior policy makers for government. Then they leave. So really having impact on central government policy. The other thing is I was fortunate to go to Northern Ireland, and when we talk about scale, how big can this get? Well, there's a group in Northern Ireland called the Bryson Group, and I met up with those, and they do everything in Northern Ireland. They've got such a big range of activity. Specifically was interested in their recycling systems that they do, but because of our CBEC's involvement with recycling and waste. But Bryson now runs 60% of the Northern Ireland's curbside collection. That's equivalent to one community organisation running 60% of New Zealand's curbside services, because it's about 4 or 5 million people in Northern Ireland. So there is no limit to the scale. They have health services, they have recycling services, so their health services are as big, care services are as big as their recycling, so massive. So there is no limit. And it's happened again in Northern Ireland where nothing was going to happen. Communities stepped in and made things happen. So a lot of similarities with this area here. And I suppose what you see, one thing CBEC's learned, and what I learned from being in those places, is that it's that capacity. When you get to a certain size, there's no limit to what you can do. And Bryson was an amazing example of that. But the other interesting thing was that how long, is this a new idea, a new concept? Well, Bryson's been going since 1910. And they've got some wonderful documents that show you that history. Another group that I work with was Locality, and they're a combination of development trusts and the BASIC, which was set up in 1860 by Oxford University and Cambridge, where they set their graduate students to the most depressed areas of London and said, tell us what we need to do about social change. And that formed so that community enterprise that exists today and that network actually form a lot of the social policy that we have in New Zealand right now, because it went to England and it came to New Zealand. Anyway, so, there's no limit to what we can do, and we absolutely have a place in the economy to actually grow our economy and make it sustainable. Sorry, I think I put him to sleep. Sorry. Okay, shit, okay. Okay, so I'll quickly run through this because there's a couple of other speakers and I don't want to take up too much time, so I'll quickly go through my slides. Yep. Okay, and so I suppose the first one here is that a chap on the right, left-hand side. We've known about the problems of our environment and social problems for a long, long time. We've been told about it, but we don't seem to ever get it right and make the big changes that we need to. We all grew up with Dr. Seuss and his teachings, and so it's about doing something and actually and not waiting for anyone else to do it for us. And I think the far north is a classic example. We are an island. We live totally disconnected from the rest of the world. Let's make it, the far north. Let's make it happen up here. The other thing is that craziness of our economy. We can't. We've got to separate the measurement system. We can. More crime is great for our growth statistics. So those sort of things are really going to be, are crazy, and we need to start giving people the message of what the alternative is, and actually take away some of the myths about what makes up our economy, and do it in a way that we don't scare people off. Like we've had some talks today about some of the major problems we've got facing our Earth and our planet. When we deliver the message, we've got to do it with the hope and the opportunities that come with it. So if we just talk about the problem, the disaster that's coming, we'll actually turn people off and shut down new opportunities. So we've got to be able to provide the alternative while we're presenting that. Do you want to do the next one? Oh, sorry, I'll do it. Sorry, what am I doing? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, the other thing is, I suppose, be careful what we hope for. On the left-hand side is the Gold Coast. And it started off as a batch, and people going there, local people going there for their holidays. And so most probably not a lot of local people live there anymore. They live in other parts of Queensland, but that's all been taken up and they've moved on. And so we have to be careful, and I think Di raised this before, we can't be dependent on tourism and massive industry. It's actually the people that live here that make our local economy and can make it prosperous. So, the key is to get that right. I used Kaikoura over there because I was there 10 years ago at a conference, and a speaker from the community was there, and they said that 10 years ago, they went, we've gone from a depressed area to an area that's actually flourishing. And they actually got together as a community and said, how much more do we want? How far do we go before it goes from positive development to negative impact on our families and communities? Because they had a flourishing little town. They all had jobs. They had a lovely little cafes and restaurants and everything going well. But did they want to go to the left-hand side? And they decided they weren't. They were going to make it difficult through their planning process with council for more development, limit the number of beds that could happen in Kaikoura. Interesting. We don't talk about that too much in New Zealand. And I'll just zip through there, what CBEC's about. We've focused on those four things: local ownership, creating employment, redirecting spending. Those are the sort of mechanisms we've used to get to where we are with CBEC. And I suppose we've always tried to avoid competing with the private business. There's no point in us starting up a new enterprise in town and competing with a local enterprise. And so we've always looked to grow new things to the district to our area, rather than actually fight over what's already there. And some of the things that have come through that is that we've created a lot of joint ventures and activities like that. Our first joint venture was with a private company in Kaitaia. So our first joint venture with Pukepoto Quarries to run the landfill. So that was one of the first things we ever did to grow, to get some growth in our organisation. We took a big risk, took on running the landfill, built the new landfill, ran it for 7 years, and now Pukepoto Quarries still runs that landfill. We don't, but they still run it. So we stepped out of it. It wasn't not enough in there for two organisations, so we let them have that. But what I'm saying is, from there, CBEC has gone and had joint ventures in Waiheke Island, Waiheke, Wanaka, now with Te Raroa in this area, and our friends Nahu and Debbie in Morewa. And we've grown from those joint ventures. Every time we did that, we did a big step up in activity. And those are sort of things we do. That's just an example of some of the things we do. And I suppose, looking at each one of those slides, we do it, and the key word is unorthodox. We've done everything differently. And a lot of it hasn't been planned, to be honest, too greatly. We've just done things. But like with the insulation, when you're unorthodox, you look at a market that doesn't exist. We've targeted low-income families, not high-income families. The people that don't have the money is our target market. On the right-hand side with our labour hire, we've just done everything we can possibly do to create jobs. And we use our labour hire to do that, and we'll also do jobs that normally someone would come out of town to do, like big landscaping projects. We do them in town. We create the jobs locally. On the right, the bottom here is our recycling crew. There's only not all of them. There's most probably about 2/3 of them. And again, we were told recycling would never work 25 years ago, 15 years ago, and as recent as 10 years ago, that what we were trying to achieve was not possible. Interesting statistic. In New Zealand, if we suddenly recycled the waste that's currently going to landfill, we would create 28,000 jobs in New Zealand, permanent jobs forever. There's already thousands of jobs within the recycling industry, but there's 2.8 million tonnes of waste still going to landfill. If we turn that into a resource, 28,000 permanent jobs. And we're looking about growing New Zealand's economy by bringing new industry. There's one right there without actually changing anything. So I suppose it's And we have a bus service. Again, bus services, rural communities don't have bus services because they don't work. Well, they do work. We're the most affordable bus service in New Zealand. We're the cheapest per kilometre driven. We are one of the highest performing bus service in the top 5 of the 15 public transport systems operating in New Zealand. And we run on biofuel, which is sustainable fuel, 50% of our fuel. So we actually can run pretty good bus services in rural communities. It's just we're not allowed to. We're the only one out of 15 public transport systems that get no funding from government. Only one, but we're the highest performer. Unusual. And still aware of time, moving on, are we being prepared for what's going to around the bend? There was a great program on Māori television just last week on peak oil, and we've been told about this a bit like the Lorax, a guy Hubbard in 1952 was telling us it's going to run out in America in 72, 73. It happened in 74. Some of us remember the crash in New Zealand or fuel prices in 74. Well, he predicted that, and he also predicted the one in 2008. So, we've been told about this, we're not reacting. Let's not wait for other people to actually get us there. Let's do the preparation ourselves now, because these things are going to have massive effects on small rural communities. Fuel prices over the last 12 years has gone up 130%. Wages, 30%. I guarantee that trend line will happen again over the next 10 years. That case, we will not be driving to work, we will not be able to afford to. I can tell you that right now. So if we don't make some pretty radical changes soon, we're going to pay the price. So we need to develop our own models, not wait for any other models of economics. We develop our own. And I suppose this is the interesting, exciting stuff. We're now getting, it's about what we can do rather than, what the problem is. And we can do a lot in our retail sector. I've often wondered about doing a measurement of all the product that comes into this town, Kaitaia. Let's measure how much bread, how much meat, how much milk, how much everything that comes into the site, and then work out of that 50 different commodities, what you can start a business around, what would sustain a local business. Because we can beat them all. We don't have to freight it up, and with freight prices going to be getting higher and higher. We've got an example of our market where fruit prices are half the price of Pack and Save. I think we could do the same with a lot of these products. So let's get our local businesses flourishing. And then there's just some madness, who in their right mind would actually initiate the top, throwing all our resources into a landfill? Realistically, if you put a child down and gave them the options, what would they choose? So we've looked at opportunities, turning that madness into opportunities, and recycling is one of the things we're known for. And it's now, we're one of the far north. Couldn't be done 25 years ago, like I say, and 15 and 10 years ago. What we said we were going to do couldn't be done by the experts. We're a leading organisation in New Zealand. We're one of the top performing recycling districts in New Zealand, and so it can be done. And it's most likely done a lot easier because we're not influenced by a big urban population that's hard to change. We're a small boat that can manoeuvre pretty rapidly. Infrastructure, we're in a building that, there's a lot of agony in our community about building infrastructure, building Te Ahu. It was the greatest thing we've ever done in a long time. Yeah. It really was important that we actually did something, Infrastructure is for the people that live here and the people who might choose to come here. That's what we're building it for. Not for tourists, we're building it for ourselves. And the same with things like aquatic centres. Let's just do them. Let's get them built and get on with it. So, because they will make our living here far nicer, and it will attract people to the area rather than just be dependent on tourism. Other things, we don't like unnecessary spending. And one of the things that we've started with a home insulation, but we're moving into energy saving and energy generation. I won't take away Norman's talk, but he'll go into more detail about that. But it's just a madness. We're the highest, we pay the highest price for power in New Zealand, and we've got the best place to generate it by the sun. We might make a connection there at some stage. Anyway, I also think there's a massive opportunity for this district. This is just something I've thrown up, and don't worry about the wording. I think we're the best. We're the best in New Zealand at recycling. We're up there. We're going to be the best at energy efficiency. I can tell you that within 5 years we'll be leading New Zealand. So let's grab some high ground and rebrand ourselves, or not the only brand, but grab the brand of sustainability for this area and get people coming up here who want to come up here and live here for that reason and who want to visit us to see what we do. There's a real opportunity there for this district to go. There's a lot of positive things up here, not negative things. And I suppose employment. At the end of the day, we've got to get proactive about employment, and that means creating jobs. This is not the jobs that exist. we have to create another circle of activity around our economy that is job creation. CBEC started doing that by just creating jobs, clearing riverways, building playgrounds. Every playground in this town is built under an employment creation program. Time to go back there. We've got plenty of caring to do. We've got plenty of trees to plant. You walk out of this place here, and there will, in any direction, 100 metres, you'll find 100 jobs. There's no end to work. It's just connecting up unemployment spending with employment. So let's just make that connection. The other thing is, and I suppose finishing on this, CBEC's unorthodox. And I looked it up I was trying to find a word to describe us, and I think this does. CBEC is unconventional, it's unusual, unwanted. We've been named or called all these things at some stage. I like avant-garde. I always thought it was a different meaning I never really knew the description of avant-garde, but it really describes us. What does it say? I think it says something like, got it here somewhere, making the most of what you have. No, sorry, no. Anyway, avant-garde is basically being completely different and doing it in a different way. And I thought, when I found that description, I thought, those are the things we need to do in this district. We need to be acting in this manner to bring the changes we need to. We need to be unorthodox. And that does describe CBEC. Very unorthodox. Thank you.
For 15 years or so, I've been working here. Great to reconnect with Deb and Nahau again. Other people in the Hokianga, Dave and Janine, and other people in the area. My whānau connection is through Takahiwai Marae. I feel very closely connected to the north, so I might be wearing a different hat this time, but I feel that I'm back again to do the mahi is important and needs to be done. Also mention, Ruben, that some of your activities have reached down as far as Wellington, some of your work in housing and sustainable housing. So you're beginning to make waves. Just returning to we've lost. Thank you. Just give it a go. The themes of the conference: empowering communities, putting the local back into our economy, and you cannot control what you do not own. So, how many people here in their backyard have got one of these? Of a scale of that kind? Okay. Didn't realise that we had the owners of Contact Energy here. Okay. How many people own any of these? Bit of a trick question, because in fact you do own it. We'll talk about that later. Okay. How many people own one of those on the left-hand side, a hot water cylinder? Here's the crunch. How many people own a hot water cylinder wrap? Okay. And which one of these most accurately reflects the shower in your house? Okay. The one on the top right-hand home, hopefully. So what do these 10 things all have in common? They all provide water. They all provide hot water to your home or your business, your marae, your sports club, church, or so on. But let's go back and have a little bit of a test look at the humble hot water cylinder wrap. It saves you money. It saves you New Zealand dollars money by generating what we call in the trade negawatts. And a negawatt is the unit of electricity saved. So let's just have a look at some of the figures. So here we have a humble hot water cylinder wrap. Some What about our hot water cylinder wrap? This particular hot water cylinder wrap you could be said began its life in Moriwa in 2001 when Deb and Nahau, with my support, set up what's become Healthy Homes Taitokerau. So if you imagine this hot water cylinder wrap has since 2001 been steadily chugging away, and you imagine it's got another 10 or 15 years of its life, there's $2,000 there. You don't own the dam, with one or two exceptions, but you do own a hot water cylinder wrap. Now let's just think about the implications of this and what it means, not only to the households, but to the broader economy. So we assume the wrap was installed in 2001. It's been chugging away for 13 years. You own it, you control it, and you realise the financial benefits of that investment. So let's just take a closer look and see how much it's cost you to be saving money. But first of all, a very quick aside. We'll run through this, not now, but for every dollar that you pay for your power bill, most of that money leaves the local economy. Of course, it goes to Contact Energy or Meridian or one of those companies. You'll see there a figure of 16 cents, which suggests that some of the money stays because Top Energy charge the electricity companies to transmit. But most of the money leaves your economy. So the cylinder wrap costs about $120 to install, saves this amount of money. But the critical thing is the next bullet point there, that you're paying 35 cents or thereabouts for your electricity. The cost of investing in a hot water cylinder wrap over the life of the wrap, the electricity that you're saving is costing you 1 to 2 cents. So by taking control of your electricity bill, you are getting chunks of your electricity at between 1 and 2 cents rather than paying 35 cents. Is that a good deal for you? But wait, there's more. So this is just a humble hot water cylinder wrap. I must say the figures here surprised me a little, but they came from the Department of Building and Housing to suggest that a low-flow, high-performance hot water cylinder, a high-performance shower head, could save $500 a year. I guess you'd have to have about 7 teenagers to be saving that sort of money. But these are the kinds of figures which are being moved around. So what we're starting to do, if you're beginning through the thousands of houses that have been retrofitted already, we are saving thousands of dollars, millions of dollars are being saved because they're being retained within the local far north economy. These are average and general figures. The average New Zealand house spends that amount of money. In the far north, the average New Zealand house, as far as we can project without doing the serious research, is paying in the order, on the average, of $230 per month. There will be some exceptions here because some people really seriously engage with energy efficiency, but does anybody here pay $300 or $400 over winter for their power bill every month? Yeah. So the Ministry of Social Development each day get requests from several households whose power bills are in the order of $300 to $500 per month. So this is the money that's holding those households in poverty, and it's exporting and sending the money to other parts of New Zealand. It's not being retained here. I'm not going to go into this in detail, excepting to point out the obvious, that the less money you have, the more money you're spending on paying your power bills, or if you're not paying your power bills, then your children are getting sick, they're getting asthma, they're getting the kind of diseases associated with being in cold, damp and unhealthy houses. So what we're talking about, the vision that Cliff has, and Cliff is incredibly ambitious, and sometimes he scares people like me because of what he believes can be done, but with a 25-year track record of what CBEC has achieved, who am I to tell Cliff that he's being incredibly ambitious? But this is the kinds of targets that Cliff has talked about, saving up to 50% of the energy used in households and in businesses and in marae and in schools and in industry across the region, capturing and retaining those dollars to rebuild and strengthen and support the Far North economy. And there's been some discussion around what's called economic multipliers. It's the number of times the money goes round and around. So $1 saved in the economy, we had that very interesting example. I'm still trying to get my head around the $100 bill and where it actually went. This is trying to actually say that we think that, what Ken was saying was true, but maybe it didn't work quite in the dramatic way that you pointed it out to us. But in summary, different economic activity has different economic multiplier benefits. And this is just a summary. It's a quick way of saying that for every dollar saved in the local economy, the money does go around, not in the way quite that you described it, Ken, but it does actually go round and round and have a valuable multiplier benefit. So that's the figure that Cliff has set. And I believe it's possible. No, you're aiming high, Cliff, and that's what you've always done, and that's why you've got what you've achieved. So just very quickly, energy dollars saved goes into local pockets. The money doesn't leave town. Some of it stays here. But of course, the other good news for you very smart people in the far north is when about 15 years ago, the energy sector was restructured, people here had the good sense to retain the ownership of your local lines company. So you each get a discount per year, and all the other profits go back into community groups and community activities. And they also support energy efficiency programs as well. So to those of you who fought a campaign to retain local control of your local lines company, I applaud you. You did really well. Us folks in Wellington have seen ours go offshore on its own, I think by a Singaporean infrastructure company. So Cliff talked about energy projects that I'm working with CBEC to help roll out, and here are two of them. The rolling out of a photovoltaics supply and installation services underway. Many people here I know have already gone off grid. How many people have got PV here already? Yeah. That's a greater percentage than almost any other part of the country, but I think they ain't seen nothing yet once we get some serious market penetration. And the other activity which is coming close is the local assembly and manufacture of a very high efficiency wood burner. And there's several other ideas that Cliff and I are talking about with Paul Hanson and others, and the creation of a collective electricity buying group, development of whole-of-house energy packages, support services for industry and business. And bullet point 4 is something which has already been commenced, and that's the creation of a coalition across the region, not just bottom up with communities, but top down working with. Wayne Hutchison is here today from Northland Inc., who's the Economic Development Agency for the region. North Energy, Paul Worsfeld was here yesterday, he's not here today. We're beginning to work with Top Energy on a project that will see them involved with energy efficiency. So we're looking to create a broad-based coalition of the willing. And of course we still want to, with Deb and Nahau, who are CBEC's critical partners in this energy project, and they've been working together so far on the one energy activity, the retrofit work, is to keep going with the energy retrofit work because, among other things, that attracts decent chunks of government money from outside the region. And just a very quick example, Gussing, a small town in Austria, on the ropes or on the barbed wire as it were, has literally rebuilt its economy through a combination of energy efficiency, utilising its own indigenous materials. Here in the far north it might be woody biomass, and of course you've got the NAFA geothermal steam as well. And how do we do this in the far north? Well, as we speak right now, Paul Hanson, who is CBEC's energy man, is at a conference in Australia where the first ever community power conference. So entities such as CBEC and Heiiwi and many others from around Australia are putting together a concerted initiative, so it looks like that maybe the far north is going to be one of the first New Zealand entities to join what might be an Australasian initiative. Okay, so winding up, it's underway, it's happening. It's building on work that's been done to date. Kina, as Cliff has mentioned, has put resources in terms of my time in to try and help incubate some of these new initiatives over the sort of period that Shona extended. So that's currently being explored and investigated. So it's a broad-based strategy. It's building on what's been achieved, it's plugging the leaks, it's generating megawatts, and it's using local resources to rebuild and give you the economy.
Kia ora whare, tuana hau ki te mihi a te kia koe, te hau kāinga, te hoa e te rangatira, me hiki te kaupapa o tēnei hui, mihi atu. Mihi atu kia koutou ngā tangata katoa, o ngā hau e whae hara mai nei, ki te tautoko o te kaupapa oranga o te tangata, o te whenua, o te ao katoa, ngā mihi. Well, whānau, you've been sitting there for a long time. You know, my background is from being a youth worker. That's where I come, that's where my roots are. So you got to all stand, because you fellas are going to get tired, and I'm sure your brains are a bit soaked, so etu. Now, see, I did this with rangatahi, and they were really onto it. Now, they say as you get older, the brain starts to get a bit ngenge, which means a bit tired. So I want to see if this is true. This is a very simple exercise in seeing how quick your reflexes are. So what I'm going to do is simply, as my hand crosses, when it crosses, you clap. If it doesn't cross, you don't clap. Now, do you want me to explain that again, just for some? Okay. All right, let's do it. Now, when my hand crosses, for those that can't see, I'll put it up here. You clap when they cross, and you don't clap when they don't cross. Okay? Ready? Oh, well, it was a bit slow. Come on, guys. It was like, you know, what do they call it? Lagging. Okay, there we go. Woo, pretty good. Okay. Oh, watching. Come on, concentration. It's still early in the morning. We got somebody from the council couldn't get it. I'm in trouble, we're in trouble, we're in trouble. Yeah, give that money back. Yeah, you got excited about that money, eh? Okay, let's do it. Oh, come on, we got to get it right. You're going to be, nah, I'm not going to do that. Okay, one more time. Come on, let's go. Oh, thank you very much, people. Just in case I say bad things, then you're not going to clap after. You know, one of the whakatauakis, or one of the sayings at the beginning of my mahi in my hometown of Moeroa, where I was born and bred, was this whakatauaki that we used to use, tamatu, tamaora, tamanoho, tamamate. To stand is to live, to lie down is to die. And that's been sort of a catch cry over the many years that we've been there, me and my wife, over close to 25 years now. So when you start to talk about doing things, it just doesn't happen overnight. And one of the things, I was thinking, a wise person says to me, a very wise person said to me, if you don't look within, you go without. If you don't look within, you go without. Now, a lot of the korero that I've heard, and I've got to apologize, I got here late yesterday. Because see, if we don't do this right, the other mahi I do, which is stopping people go to jail, gets prolific. So it sounds funny, but it's actually true. That if we don't get our shit together, we're going to perpetuate what's been happening. And we've heard, I'm not going to go over the story again about this region. This region, we're defined many times by everybody else. Actually, Māori are used to that. Being defined by everybody else. And if we're going to change things, now this is not a put down. When I talk about this is around partnership, true partnership. And I want to take my hat off to my mate over there, Cliff, because he stayed in the room with this pōrangi Māori when we sat down and negotiated about how we do business. And I brought my kaupapa onto the floor, which comes from a whole different lens. And he sat down there and we worked it through. See, because I think sometimes we got to ask, he's shown all the stuff that has happened. And that's just generated by two groups. Look at this room. Oh, the other thing too is that I haven't bought a PowerPoint. That's why I bought the white shirt, just in case you get bored. Also made, I think, from Rawane, this shirt. But, I'll tell you a story, because I'm a storyteller. And when I was a young fella, I used to go to Moeroa school. And, back in the day, you only had one TV channel. And, that we heard that the Television New Zealand was coming to Moeroa. So, wow, and they were coming to our school, because my dad was chairman of the school board. So, they came in with their cameras, so we all rushed home. Moeroa was going to be on TV. Woohoo! So just as we were watching the news, you see this pan shot. And it was my whare. And just as they were doing that, they made this comment that these people from lower socio-economic, and they were poor. Well, was the first time I realized I was poor. See, people who define us, or if we start to believe the rhetoric, or we believe the lie, you hear a lie long enough. See, we talk about being poor. Actually, my wife says, don't talk about poverty, talk about greed. Yeah, very simple. And actually, I heard a bit of that yesterday. But I don't want to get stuck there. I don't want to get stuck there. And I'm like my bro over there, I love it, bro. Because together, in partnership, and that's what we've got to see, what we have, not what we don't have. Or be defined by others outside of this area. Because the real power for change is in here. Or when you talk about pohara or poverty, the poverty is that I don't have. The poverty is that our mind is shut down. So, sounds evangelistic. So one of the things I have to talk about, and that's what I felt. We're going through this thing, this whole region, because I'm talking about a region. You know, that we think we can't, but we're hearing snippets. We're all divided into our own little pockets. Because you've got to ask. You know, another thing, I went to another trip to Australia, and I think people have heard this, so you can hear it again. Sorry. But, you know, I learned because I'm open to opportunity. You know, Atua created us to be creative. So you've got to keep all senses open. So I go to Australia to see my sister-in-law, you know, and I travel up to Cairns, you know, going up to Cairns, and you see these signs, you know, I want to go for a swim, beware of the crocodiles. You go up to the campsite, you know, have a look inside there, beware of the mosquitoes, dengue fever. I look at some of the places and, it's just mangrove. You know, you go to the beach in Cairns, they put sand down, and it's all mangrove. You know, I take my hat off to those people. Because even though they've got snakes, spiders, dengue fever, you know, swamp, they've created an existence out of there. Amazing. We come from the north. No snakes, no dengue fever, beautiful beaches, amazing climate, and we're pohara. There's something wrong with this picture. And, you know, because you're that saying, hey, if you always do what you always done, you always get what you always got. So we need to change the picture. So with all of this, you've got to ask the question, so why are we stuck? Why are we in this place? And that's something that, you know, we heard some of it yesterday. I've got to acknowledge my whānau. They sat up and spoke, and we heard it. It was uncomfortable. Ooh, those Maoris up there doing their thing again. How come they're always complaining? How come they always got the negative? Why are they doing that? Can't they see what we're doing? It's good for all of us. Actually, no, it isn't. That's why they're complaining. See, I got to say this, and I'm not doing this to takahi any other culture in the room or to put down. The truth is that in this region, the development has been about one culture and their aims. And they've been empowered to do that. I'm telling you, you are missing out. In the economic crisis that we're in at the moment, you need us Māoris. I'm telling you, that is not a joke. And what we bring, hear me, and I'm saying to you Māoris, we need our Pākehā friends too, so don't get cocky. Yeah. And you saw an example. You saw an example when the collaboration comes together. You know, Thursday, we're opening a curtain bank in Moeroa, the metropolis of Moeroa. Because I had people that, like you know, oh, no, you can't do that in Moeroa. Why? So now I'm not putting down the attempts to try and create opportunity. But usually the job is we're usually working in the menial stuff. And we're just making it. Some not. We need to share this. We need to share the prosperity. And we're not talking about pingers or money. You know, we need to share the resources. My thing to the council, this is very simple thinking. The chain is as strong as its weakest link. So when we talk about regional development, we need to be looking at those areas that are struggling. Because if you don't pay any attention, you're going to get bitten in the ass. And it's simply because If our people aren't engaged, if our people aren't part of the solution, ngāwha are beckoning. You know, for us, one of my things with my colleague, she says, when we go into ngāwha to see our whanaunga, she says, man, boys, os kaumātua kuia out here multitasking, because you're on the marae, because you're in this marae. People, all I've come really to say, and I could talk about the work of Moeroa, but there's better ones there they can talk about because they're doing it too. I only represent some amazing people given the opportunity to get into the sunlight and create and co-create. You know, we're talking about, we bought a factory the other day because we're going to build those stoves, those ovens. You know? We were talking the other day with North Power about how we're going to help hook up the fiber optic cable using our guys. See, I think, talk about energy, there's another energy. And I'm going to put that there. For us, Māori, wairua is really important. It's not an airy-fairy thing. We started this kaupapa this morning with our haukainga, you know, lifting, hicking our combined energy, tuatua. I don't apologize for that thinking if it's upsetting to people. Because for me, coming down that line, and this is coming back to how we do this, it's around values. You know, enterprises with a heart. Enterprises that are driven from people, not profit of money. You know, if I was to do the kororo around I was thinking when I was sitting there, the PowerPoint, I would flick the camera around and put it on you. See, because here's the potential. Here's the kākano, or the seeds of opportunity and future. So if you're looking for somebody to ride in, and I loved our speaker from, thank you, Shona. And it is good sometimes to look without, because sometimes you can't see the wood from the trees when you're stuck in doing it hard. And there are times we need to go out. You know the story I saw, he told the story of Kaikora. You know, you've heard the story, but it's true. You know, their town was dying. These tourists turned up by accident, thought there was something really happening. And the town was going, what are we going to do? Our young people are leaving. It's really bad. You know, and these people at the back, the tourists says, yeah, but you got whales. The rest is history. So, what have we got? What aren't we seeing? Now, I can tell you, the rauruauru from our people is that you don't see us. I'm telling you, you say the words, and I'm talking to our partners here, you don't see what we bring. And I understand that. I understand that because you come from a construct of a world that's created around your thinking and around your lens. So you don't understand that. But what I'm saying to you today, for the future of this region, the future of this nation, is that you need to open your eyes and see what you have. He aha te mea nui. It is people, it is people, it is people. And all you see with all my relations in Moeroa is just, you know, they're growing. They're starting to take their power back, their mana back, because they ain't going to be walking to somebody else's narrative or construct. I think that island that you talked about over in Scotland is my little community. But you come from communities, little, big. So what what value do you play in there? And it's got to be shared. It's not about ko myself. It's got to be about tātou katoa, for all of us. And so the kororo is that he kai o te rangatira, and I know time is going. 5 minutes. Te kai o te rangatira. See, this is where I love our kororo. It is about, hei aha te kai o te rangatira. What is the food of chiefs? He kōrero. Now, just because you have a meeting doesn't mean it's a kai o te rangatira. Unless it's about the katoa. It is about others. It's about the bigger picture. It's about the bigger picture. Usually when I'm doing this, I get nervous. What are they thinking? What are they thinking? But I want to take my time because it's really important. I came here just like, what I really wanted to come for? It wasn't to kōrero. Actually, I came to listen. I came to hear what's happening in this region. That's what I came for. Where are the possibilities? Where are the synergies? Where are the things? See, the kōrero, why I say that is, I know what I know, but there's many things I don't know. See, too many times, we're not listening, because all we are about is what we know. But we got huge gaps. There's heaps we don't know. So it's not building on. So me talking, I'm telling you what I know. But the element for me is that I need to know what I don't know. That's why we need everybody in the room. And I'm not into the patronizing. There's this kōrero, and my niece, she's sort of become, I think, child psychologist, and she did her thesis. And one of the kōrero in there, she talks about, and I don't mean to offend, and it's called the noble savage. And the process behind, the thinking behind this, that yes, we are noble, but one day, we're noble, but we're still savages, and one day we'll get it. We haven't got it, people. Figure it out. But what I'm saying is, you need to hear the voices. You need to see what we have. You hear Cliff over there? We're like that at Moerewa. We're just obsessed with the opportunities. You would think if we talk, where are those fellas from? Can't be from up north because there's nothing happening up there. I agree with Norman Smith. Actually, we have catalysts here that nowhere else in the country. Māori will talk out from a point of taonga tuku iho. Those are things, gifts given to us by atua for us to maintain, and I come back to that. People say, well, you must be a greenie. No, I'm a Māori. And part of me being a Māori is that I'm a kaitiaki. Part of my job is that I'm a steward of this taonga that we have, because it has given life to us, so we have to maintain it. That's what we bring to the table. That's what we bring to the table. So, people, the excitement is when I get into a room full of people, I think, gee, let's multiply this. I'm not a number cruncher like these guys over here, right? But I know what this hoop-ear-nosed kid from Moerewa has been able to be a part of, and be infectious, about the possibilities. Because that's what Cliff is. You sit in a room and, man just does your head in. So I just want to finish here, and I thank you again for the opportunity. And I just want to encourage you in this room that you are part of the solution. But we need to be aware of not only first who we are, but who sits in the room. And the power that we have to do this in a collective way. So, whānau nō reira kumioro I taku koro I tēnei ata, ma te atu e manaaki. Kia ora.
Yeah, I have a very simple question, Mr. Smith. How much is a cylinder wrap thingamy?
Applied and installed by people like CBEC or Heiwi, about $120, and savings in the order of $80 a year.
Thank you.
I hear what you're saying, and that's not a problem, except you're talking with people that live from hand to mouth. And $120 at that point in time is a lot of money. You cannot see the $2,000 down the track that you will save. And I agree with you, totally. However, you are talking a lot to people who are very poor, basically, and to do that, you need to be able to say, hey, how do we change our thinking?
We're fighting for space here now.
Kia ora matua. People realise for a lot of our family, they're all not on the same level. So that was part of the initiative from the government for warming up. New Zealand was part of it. So they put putia in for a lot of our whānau who are at the low end to get their houses done for free. That's part of that job was the cylinder wraps. The major issue around there was actually the health side for our whānaus, because in Māori whānaus there are a lot of young children, kaumātua queer. So in regard to that kororo about the cost of it, for those they've given, and that's where both Cliff and I and our team have been able to get into every single house, getting the message out there that this thing at this time, the government sees as a priority to make sure that at least get that intervention.
Also, there's something else which we've been discussing on that issue. You're quite right. Sometimes if you're looking to the choice between food and a hot water cylinder rack, it's no contest. However, there's other ways to do this, and we've been exploring as part of this suite of activities the idea of a revolving loan fund. So if there's several thousands of dollars, if you loan to the household the $120, or you supply and install the rack for nothing, then the savings generated will repay the cost of the loan. So very often energy efficiency measures will pay for themselves, providing you can put in place some kind of financial instrument, I think is the flash term, some kind of revolving fund or something to get people over what Rob rightly points out as one of the initial barriers.
Just following up that, just interestingly, we've been talking about it, setting up a revolving loan fund, which Norm's talked about, and thinking that maybe our organisation could put $20,000 or $25,000 into a fund that we get our money back. It might be set there for 5 years, whatever, but we get the money back at some stage. So, and that would go into a revolving loan fund at sort of 1 or 2%, just covering administration costs to make it really possible for people. On Friday, the guy that runs our accounts at work came up to me and said, "How far are we going with this loan fund?" I didn't even know about it. And we're already loaning to people who can't afford it and getting them into new systems. And so we set a figure of $30,000 as far as we can go at CBEC with already doing this. I didn't even know it was happening. It was just people within the organisation picking up on some need, and small amounts like $1,000 here and $2,000 there for their systems was already going out at 3 to 6 months, no interest to help people get going. So I think there's a massive opportunity for setting up, like we're already putting some money into a loan fund, we might as well formalise it and say it's a loan fund, maybe administered by somebody else external to us. And anyone can put their $1 to $1,000 to $100,000 into that, knowing that it will generate an absolute change in somebody's life, in some family's life in this area. I think it would be very attractive to a lot of people who look at the North and say, what can we do for the North? Oh, we've got a little bit of spare money, we'll put $5,000 or $10,000 over 2 or 3 years, knowing we'll go for home insulation, home heating and home health. And so I think that's unofficially already happened, I didn't even know it was happening. I think it's just a matter of formalising it.
Thank you, Jim. We know that you're just the figurehead of the organisation.
Just looking at what you're looking at doing, Cliff and Norm, and what Shona was talking about, the Blueskin Bay energy project is one that I'm quite interested in, because I think I'm thinking about smaller communities, and again what Robert was saying about people not having much money. But people with the least money pay the highest power bills, because people like me can afford to do things like photovoltaic cells and so on. I would really like to see my community be able to do that as a community project. So are you looking at going in that direction?
Well, I think there's absolutely, completely, and there's a big pocket of money. The thing is, the money's already been spent in a lot of cases, like there was, someone pointed out before, Norman did, that every one of our WINS offices in the far north is right now paying out a lot of money to pay power bills for people who just can't afford it. So the money's going there, but it just keeps going up, and that money doesn't stick to town, keeps going out of town.
Yeah.
So you transfer some of that spend into helping get that appliance that's going to create heat and hot water into the house. You're going to improve the health of the house, efficiency, productivity, all those things come with it. And so the money's, some of the money's already happening, coming in and going straight back out again. So it's about bringing some of those things together. I can see the ideal program might be that low-income families who want to do this with their homes, they might get a grant of $1,000, $1,500 from someone like MSD. They get maybe a philanthropy organisation puts in $1,000 per household, and they borrow the rest, and it's on low interest, and suddenly they can do it. And like Norman said, the efficiency pays for the cost of this anyway. It just makes it quicker and more possible. Wealthy people, people with some money and resources will do it anyway and get the benefit straight away. People on low incomes won't get close.
No.
And so this is the way
The reason I mentioned Bliskin Bay was Shona raised it, and I believe they've done it as a community. Is that right?
I can just speak about that because I'm actually acting as an advisor to Bliskin Bay as well, also wearing my Kenya hat, and they've got a whole range of programs going. But was your question about the funding instruments that they're using?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they'll be borrowing money, and Bliskin Bay Community will be putting in some money. They're going to need third-party funding. In general terms, they're looking to raise about $1.5 million locally, but they'll need $6 or $7 million, so they'll be going for third-party funding. Now, whether they try and raise that within Dunedin City or within their larger community, that's still to be determined.
Right.
Thank you. Laurie, did you have a question?
No, I'm just thinking now.
Okay, thank you. Could the microphone be given to John, please?
Thank you. I'm not quite sure who on the panel I should direct this to, but is there any way of tapping into existing landfills to extract methane to build a power plant to supply the local community? Thank you.
I guess that's me. There is, but normally you require quite a substantial landfill, and you need to have done it at the initial establishment stage to actually burrow into the system and get a good amount of gas out of a landfill without having the piping system in right from day one is not really that viable. And our landfills are relatively small, and let's face it, we're trying to discourage green matter going into our landfills because that causes the methane. Let's not try and make a low efficiency gas system work just by putting in the wrong thing in the ground. You know, like we're trying to work it the other way around. So really, landfills should have no gas in them because the stuff that's in there should be inert. And so all I'm saying is our ones in the farm are too small to justify.
Yes, thanks. That's why I asked whether it was possible to actually tap into existing landfills, because there's a lot of methane possibility there. But I get your point. Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm sure you could burrow into a landfill and you could be cooking your fried eggs on top without too much trouble. Because there is a lot of gas in there, but the actual system doing it economically would be difficult.
Right, thank you.
Okay, we were talking about the energy efficiency and the RAPs, but my mind immediately went to people I know. I'm a counselor, and I get people in my rooms who are renting. I had a young mother who moved something like 15 times in a single year, and these, this was a woman with children. How do we do something about the rental situation in terms of the energy efficiency? I mean, there's houses that aren't insulated. There's no wraps on the cylinders. They're going to have huge power bills. The landlord's not paying the power bill. So I'm just putting that out.
Yeah, the issue is often known as called split incentives. So the tenant pays the bill, but the landlord pays the capital cost to improve the efficiency of the house. But the landlord has no incentive, so you're quite right. The government, through ECA, perhaps Nahau can speak on this, the government has put in place incentives which mean that landlords get quite significant subsidies to upgrade their houses with certain preconditions, such as you agree not to try and claw back what it has cost you in increased rents immediately. But take-up is very difficult because most New Zealand landlords are pretty cash-strapped in their own right, not counting institutional landlords who own 35 properties. The average New Zealand landlord owns one or perhaps two properties. They're very cash constricted, and if something goes wrong in their house, they're the one that goes and fixes that drain. They don't bring in a contractor. So the government has had great trouble in trying to address what you quite rightly point out is the major area of need, the private landlord. Public landlords, as in councils and particularly Housing New Zealand, have been steadily moving through the country from Invercargill to the far north to upgrade their houses. I don't know if you've had an experience in working with private landlords, Naha?
Yeah, one of the things that I was just thinking as you said the question was, we have that all the time about being able to get people into houses that actually just are warm, healthy for their children. One of the things that, I've got to say, we have a huge problem, maybe adding to the issue really is around the whole thing of speculation with people. That's why they're cash strapped, and that's why they can't do that. But one of the things that Cliff was just mentioning to the thinking, there is the subsidies here for those that will take that up. The other thing they're talking about is about a warranty fitness for houses across the board. So that there's some basic things around heating, that every house should have in regard to providing warmth, shelter, which is just, more than what we have, just a standard of code, and that's what they're looking at the moment. I mean, we've even got people that are trained now to actually start looking at the efficiency of the house around a lot of those energy things, making suggestions and putting them into the places where you can get free services, talking with the landlords. And so the organisation that we're part of, realises a lot of those issues, and so we're trying to meet the need and create the dialogue at all the levels to try and it's not going to be one thing, I think. It's a range of options that we can offer to landlords. The thing about a lot of the speculation stuff that had gone on, and it's been busted, and that's why people are strapped at the moment. Well, I don't know how we're going to handle that one. And I'm not saying everybody that has property is that way trying to keep good houses, but that's another dialogue.
Thank you. Now, gentleman with the microphone here on the aisle.
Yeah, good morning. Just in regards to the heating system on Norman, I think you mentioned it earlier. And I was just in the what the outlining quotes you get, like your covering you have there on the heater system, and what the alternative with the solar panel, with a heating system, and that requires heating, and of course, in terms of a cost factor, it's by using our natural resources, the sun, and so I was concerned, I just to see what you think of it.
Could the microphone be given to Jane at the back, please?
I think the question is about the options, how you establish what you need to do and how you do it. I think there's a question, yeah. And I think the key thing is that we're now doing photovoltaic, so we at CBEC and he are doing photovoltaic installations, and we do home insulation, and we hopefully will be selling downdraft wood burners soon to homes. But the key thing is we don't sell anything if people don't need it. There's a whole lot of things you can do in a house before you add anything new to a house to save energy. And I think the key is we would rather undersell the products and oversell the products. And at the moment, there's a lot of people talking about PV. It's like the whole world's decided that PV is going to be the big market, the next business for New Zealand. And they're all selling big systems, very big systems, and that doesn't work in this country. You've got to have systems that you have the smaller system that gives you the maximum outcome. So for whatever you need in a home, you've got to get the right advice in total, not just individual parts of the puzzle. So the key is, and that's, we do give people advice on that. We'll go into your home and actually look at your home and go, okay, what are all the things you can do now without anything new, no extra cost, just changing everyone's habits. And then you go to start looking and adding the things that actually will improve the money that you save in your home and the heating system and stuff like that. So get the right advice first, and there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there right now selling big systems that are really not going to work for people.
Just actually picking up, sorry, I didn't pick up the question earlier. I put up on the screen and briefly in passing what we call a whole of house upgrade. And that, as Cliff suggests, you go in and you do a comprehensive energy audit, whether it's weatherizing, cylinder out shower heads, heating systems, photovoltaics, heat transfer systems, double glazing. And you have a thoughtful conversation with the family as well that relates not just to the status and the performance of the building, but you look at the family and the whānau and the health, and if you've got that motto that comes to visit and they get asthma, well, that changes your whole priority about what you do to different parts of the house. But in summary, you finish up with a big list of 15 or 20 possibilities, and you work them through in order of health priorities and financial benefits, and you just work through. And I think what you're suggesting is sometimes that's really confusing to know what to do first. And if someone comes in and they're selling a photovoltaic system or a heating system or a hot water system or double glazing, surprise, surprise, what are they going to suggest is the first thing you need to do? The product they've got for sale. So what Nahau and Cliff are looking to offer at a greater level yet again, that's an input from me, is a whole of house package solution that takes the bias out of the solution and the products. And I think that's the next real plus.
Kia ora. I had deja vu. Naho stole my speech. That's exactly what I said yesterday. Exactly this presentation I gave yesterday. It's a bit flasher, but he didn't have his wife telling him to do it properly. Which, by the way, Debbie can do. Don't know Debbie. Debbie knows everything about that industry. I like this meeting so far, everybody. It's going great. The great thing I like about depression and poverty is that it gets everybody to sort their crap out. And we can start concentrating on real problems. Not crap problems about who's winning the World Cup, but problems about fixing our children's issues. And so for me, I'm exactly like Ngā. My background is in whenua, gardens, working the land. Well, we've had to be involved in this industry because the housing, the problems around housing is just killing our people. And so this particular panel is so important for us to take this opportunity right now and take this whole summit and use it as an opportunity right now to make a real commitment, take the inspiration from Cliff and be like him and fly like the eagles. Let's make a real commitment out of the summit. I say we need to raise some serious equity, some serious cash, and put it into this particular problem. You're not going to fix anything economic if our kids are stuck in hospitals and all we're doing is running backwards and forwards to Starship Hospital. You can't grab the attention of the whānau and the young people out there if all they're doing is going backwards and forwards with all of these third world diseases, distracting them from trying to find prosperity, trying to be here in a conference like this. So I'd like to take this opportunity and put a question not only to the panel, but to everybody in here, saying, let's dig deep. Let's find some serious equity to put into these ideas. I'm talking in the millions. If a summit like this made a commitment with the council, with the iwi, with whānau and hapu especially, we need whānau and hapu on this kaupapa. Without them, it's pointless. Then we're just feeding more corporates. We must get our whānau and hapu to get into this and say, we're going to make a huge commitment. We're going to go find a massive investment. Find somebody out there, let's go find Kim.com. I can give them a call and say, mate, we need that money. And we need it to kickstart this great new future that Cliff has been trying to get us to propose. So give us that money, we'll pay you back. There's 100 of us in here right now who commit to it, plus another few thousand of my family. We'll commit to paying that back, but let's solve this issue. We've got an opportunity right now, today, to solve these problems that we're here discussing.
Can I respond to my cousin, my whanau, Mr. Koro, Patrick Koro? I don't know where he gets that from. You know, the kororo for me, Rube, is that actually we don't have to go and look without. My kororo is that the power sits in the room here. We don't have to go outside to actually create the resource, because the resource comes not just with Putia. You know, one of the biggest things that I found working alongside Cliff and in the mahi that I've done, and actually we should know it as Māori, in whakawhanaungatanga, is our connections. As I said, Putia is only a tool. The connections that we have and people that we do know, and that is where your real powerhouse is. And I think I wouldn't mind having the dialogue around, sitting around with people who have issues that they think that they want to be involved in, and doing that is through the collective power of the people who see the issue and actually have a desire to work into that. That's how we're going to do it. Putia comes later. That's a natural flow on if you've got stuff that's sensible, makes sense, and sustainable. But that first has to come from, kōrero, kanoti kanui, and having everybody in the room, and not to be mataku. When I say mataku, is that thinking fearfully, oh, what do these people need to do? See, the core of the driving force is that we want healthier homes for our whānau, for our mokopuna, for all of us. We want systems that actually aren't costing the earth and actually by overuse of wrong fuels. We can do this if we sit in the room long enough. We can work this stuff out. And I believe that, Brad, because you've got part of the answer. A singular, big or funny. You and your mate have part of it. If you bring that collective vision together, as we said, Cliff, people around the world want to know. Just my cool team, Brad.
Right, just two things. First of all, thinking about the mob, don't forget about your elders, because the colder it gets, the more they die. And there's a very clear line within health department statistics. So when the temperatures go down, if you're older, and you're not in a healthy home, you die. So they can link mortality with temperatures. Older people die more because they're in unhealthy homes. And my comment to the people of the council here, we're talking about money and revolving funds and so on. And this is, I guess, to His Worship the Mayor and to Diane John. I believe you have already debated a model which is being used by other councils, and that is when people get some government funding, get some sponsorship, but they're still a few $1,000s short, and they own their own home in a number of centres, including Auckland and Wellington. The council has a loan facility. They will lend you money against your rates to cover that $3,000 or $4,000 short. It's called a targeted loan or a targeted rate. And I believe that the council here has considered but has not yet approved it in the far north. Can anybody correct me on the fact that you might be just lagging a little behind here?
I can actually answer that question for you, Norm. It's the regional councils that look after that rate, it's not the territorial authority because of the mandate around energy efficiency. That's actually not why I've got the microphone. I'm going to jump back a few speakers about some of the questions to do with that landlord and relationships. First of all, one of the things is actually making the business case or pushing the money button for the landlord, and it's actually really easy to do that because happy tenants make stable tenants, but most landlords don't necessarily have that relationship with their tenants to ask the questions that Norm talked about with how people are living in their home and operating the household. And so there's almost a gap or a role there for somebody to do the kind of work that Norm was talking about, because it's not just about the build in the house, it's about how people live in and drive that house once they're in there, about what maximises the benefits for them of the different initiatives. And government has looked at this, and I actually did a lot of research on sustainable households and provided advice to MFE at one stage around that brokering of how people are driving their homes to improve efficiencies and maximise the benefit. But for landlords, there's all the transaction costs and advertising, spring cleaning, breakages, potential empty space and all the rest of it. And it's very little to actually demonstrate to them that there are benefits in providing these, whether it's just, blocking drafts or whatever and curtains, as well as the insulation and wraps and everything else.
Could we start to summarise, please, Jane?
I'm actually going to take my employee hat off now and put my citizen hat on, because there is a question here that I wanted to put to the entire panel based on the presentations already. I'm part of a community that is very different in terms of it's got a real eclectic mix, intergenerational, multicultural, lots of different religious backgrounds, different nationalities, and all the rest of it, different motivations, very different reasons for occupying and living in that place. And for the last 3 months we've been talking about getting a community centre established, and one of the things that's come up is about where can we locate. Do we need a physical space to initiate this work, or can we actually start doing it from our living rooms? So my question to the panel, the first one is, do you think it's actually important to have, when you've started your social enterprises, to have a physical space? And does it have to be a community space, or do we go out and buy something and become private property owners and have to manage a premise as a start-up? Is there a community facility model the best way to do it? It's question number one. The next one is, how do you feel about propriety? Once social enterprises started up in a community, does it mean that nobody else can start up an alternative social enterprise in that community? Does any one group get to own the space of being the social enterprise provider for that community? Or is it okay to have other people coming in and doing complementary things?
Answer the second question, because can I say our learning, especially around other people sharing the space, actually it's imperative. We made a big mistake in our community. We didn't know what community development corridor was. We just had a need and we knew we had to get together. So it's been a journey of working these out. But when you become the one-stop shop, everybody's going to look to you to solve all their problems. In actual fact, that's not community. That's about one group. Actually, you need all your groups participating. That's true community development. It's not looking to one trust to run the answers for your community, because you have many, from the Marae committee to the whole people. Everybody has to be part of participation, or you create a learned helplessness again. They're looking to somebody else to do it for you. And actually, the key element is that you've got a whole lot of people with their passions doing their stuff. That's just our second part of that question. No, you shouldn't be threatened because you ain't the only bus on the stop.
Thank you. Lorraine?
Also, I totally agree with that. I think that we've got some amazing initiatives in the far north, Mike Finlayson's been here, and the ginger work that he does out in the Hokianga and Hirokino. That's amazing. He's really done an incredible job against the odds. Every year he goes out with his hand out to try and get money to do something that must be done. And so, yeah, you don't want to take that away. You want to actually somehow get that together and make sure that the really good ones that are out there, you can identify them. put them up there and say, this is how you do that. It's a really good model of how you do that and how many more people could do it. So it's not one, definitely not. Creativity doesn't come from one. Corporates don't, all corporate businesses started off creative. It was a small family business at some stage. But you go to them now and they've lost their creativity. You know, most of them have lost that. They buy them because they become bureaucracies. They haven't got it naturally. And so you want to keep refreshing. You want new things coming all the time. Other thing, question about assets, grab as much as you can. Assets are good, you know, like that's one of the biggest steps that we were able to move on when we went to some of our waste contracts, our first ones in our joint ventures. We had to borrow $400,000 or $500,000 to get past go. If we didn't have a building in Kaitaia, we wouldn't have, that helped us borrow against those. And so having assets, if the opportunity to come along, grab it. In the UK, they've got some amazing systems about acquiring assets and structures to get there.
Oh, yeah. So in terms of, it's all about environment, about how easy it is to do that. I have a couple of points. One is, yes, at the moment, local government in the UK is trying to get rid of assets. Sometimes they're liabilities. So there's a whole bunch of funding and legislation which is enabling communities to take over local assets. The legislation around land acquisition is a good example of that. But it's also working for community centres and libraries and all those things. The second thing I would say though is you don't necessarily have to start with building, it depends what you're trying to achieve. And also that could be a long journey depending on what you're trying to do. So focus around what it is that you're trying to address first, cohesion of vision around that to bring people together. Doesn't necessarily have to start big. In fact, if you can get traction on some of the smaller stuff that you can demonstrate that you can collectively solve, that will give you momentum to be able to achieve some of the larger stuff. And just around the order that happens in is, just to echo what you were saying about, it's the connections with the community which will enable this to happen, and the assets may come after once you have a good business case or a good case for whatever social issues you're trying to resolve by creating that asset or owning that asset. So we can have a conversation afterwards, but you don't necessarily have to start with a place. It's the people in it.
But also, just to add to that, it's just working with what you got, seeing the vision in what you already have, you know. And I know for us in Moero, we started just with whatever was there and what we could get our hands on. And an opportunity came for us, like where we could, you know, because at that time prices were very cheap in our town to acquire buildings, you know, sweat equity. But one of the things, because your vision starts to come into what you do with your building, and then all of a sudden there's this new building, and then it becomes infectious. But it's actually, I think, start with where you're at, really around that, with what you have already in your hand, and build from there.
Just picking up on what you've spoken about, Norm, I see housing as the biggest problem at the moment in the issues that we see. There is, and Jane's spoken into some of the issues around encouraging landlords to improve their premises. We see lots of transitory rentals and in very unhealthy homes. But with regards to unbiased information and solutions and options, I see that as being a particular need of geographically spread, isolated communities, and I would include Māori communities in Marae. Sometimes, you know, I can't even go to a tangi or stay the night because I think I'll die because it's so cold. And with regards to the healthy homes option, just as an example of being able to disseminate good information,
regarding the healthy homes option. I think it was a couple of years ago. I just happened to see in an email that that the applications were available for upgrades. So we printed out about 20 and gave them out in the community.
Can we summarise, please?
There was a good uptake, but it was very limited. So I'm saying that in order for our communities, our local communities to develop, can we link with you, and we need access to unbiased information that can be presented to you.
Thanks, Laurie.
Kia ora tātou, ko Carol Burden tōku ingoa. Questions to the panel. We've heard a lot about social enterprise, and it's very exciting stuff. And I remember a long time ago there used to be a lot of social enterprise in this community, and the questions that I have relate around how closely is social enterprise linked to the government policy of the day, because now we only have those who have survived, and they're there, and then Reuben is a more recent one, and I'm sure there are some other ones here too, but not to the degree that this community had it about 10 or 15 years ago. So the second thing is, what is it that we can do if we can't have a lot of social enterprise happening? What is it that we can do with social entrepreneurs? Because we've got a hell of a lot of social entrepreneurs in the very smallest pockets of our communities in the far north. And they're in Tutukehua, I see them in Motiti, I see all these Pākānai, I see Te Hāpua, I see them all here today. And what is it that we can do, Shona, in making sure that if it's not social enterprise, because I would imagine at some point there'd be a tipping point. You can't have, one social enterprise in every community. But how is it that social enterprise can set up a campaign to help the whole lot of social entrepreneurs that are inside our community?
Yeah, very good question. The first part of that was how important is the environment in which social enterprises operate. It's significant. Obviously, I think there's probably people better qualified to talk about the local context than me, but what I can do is draw a comparison to what happened in the UK. The particular movement that happened was that chief executives of people that were running organisations which had triple bottom line, these hybrids, were pioneering in their local communities. And then they started to connect with each other. And it was just a handful of people that were leading organisations started talking to each other and saying, we really are doing something different here. And what we're learning and the way that we're doing this needs to be shared more broadly. And so it was just a couple of people in a room together, right, talking about the power of the model that they were creating, and then built that up, the local connections. So networks, there's a whole organisation in Scotland particularly dedicated to building and creating networks of social entrepreneurs. They're national, they're regional, they're across sport, they're across disability, so they're thematic, they're Highlands and Islands. And it's all about the people within that community learning from each other about how to operate within that community, learning about what's worked for them. So just like the rich information that's coming from the panel in the room here, that happening on just a perpetual basis. That also gave them the leverage to go and lobby for the conditions that needed to be changed, because it was more than one voice saying, this piece of legislation is preventing me from doing this. It was a collective voice saying, this piece of legislation is preventing us collectively from doing this. And that's when really significant change started to happen at national government and local government level. And it is in some of the technical, practical stuff, which are the preventions. Does that answer the question? Good start. Good start.
Thank you, Shona. Peter?
Oh, just a very quick final comment. In larger centres such as Auckland and Wellington, social entrepreneurs tend to cluster together and finish up sharing office spaces and office buildings or in proximity. But your question is really good, because it's made me realise that, of course, we know that there are social entrepreneurs. Often you have to be very entrepreneurial to survive and get by in certain areas. And so what I'm realising is that it's relatively easy for people in big centres the cluster in the way I've described, but we should maybe give some thought to how regional networks of people might be brought together.
Can I just add one other thing to that? Is there is infrastructure to support the networks in Scotland, because what they realised is that entrepreneurs are busy and they're concentrating on what they do, and it's quite hard for them to carve out time to go and collectively speak together when it's not an agenda, there's something to decide on the table, but they've still found it very useful. So there's coordinators whose entire role is just to send out emails and get people to get the bodies in the room, not to dictate what happens in the room, but just to hold that space. And so that's one of the tools that they use, in particularly in rural areas. It's a necessary part of it, that there needs to be just a tiny bit of support which can bring all these people together.
Thanks,
A lot of it, we're very kinesthetic learners. We learn hands-on. For a lot of people, to make sense, they've got to see it. So I think there's a lot of cross-pollination, whether we visit Whirinaki or visit Moeroa or visit Whanunga over here. It's actually giving, because, we always had, I always had these uncles that used to invent all these things, the capabilities were there, way back. But as I said, we were just carrying out somebody else's mandate. Now we're in the place where we can actually start about our vision. So I think working with and there's a wider scope from, from a kind of global scale, but because you're working in a local locality, a lot of the stuff that local people are doing has relevance. And so that's what I think. It's actually like, we did this as a people. We would visit each other when somebody had a good idea. We would talk to each other, and they'd take that away and build on that. And our generosity as people, because actually social entrepreneurs, the word social is the first part of it. And so that's what we're about. Cliff is a man with 50 billion ideas. And he can't do them all. Or if you've got ideas, as I said, it's infectious. If you go and see, taste and see, and then you go away and you work it out. And that's really what it is. It's about, having that itch you can't scratch. And you figure it out.
Thanks. Thanks, Naho. Peter?
Yeah, kia ora tātou. I'm Peter Bruce from Whangarei. Also, I'm originally from Te Kaupuru in the Northern Wairoa, another dying town. But there was some talk before about houses and warm houses, and I know that's a big part of the issue. The other part, though, with our kids and keeping them healthy is what we feed them, And it's really interesting to connecting this to social enterprise, because when you look at what we eat here, we have failed to stem the flow of sugar into our country and into our region, and flour and stuff like that, But I've been working with the Whangarei Growers Market, and one of the guys there was telling me that Murray Burns, he was saying that about 20 years ago there were 20 tomato growers in Whangarei. Now there's one. So these people, their industry has been decimated, and we continue to allow that to happen. That is the other part of the thing, because you can put your kids in a dry house, but if you keep feeding them crap, they're not going to be healthy. They're going to, and the richest people are going to be those people that are we're taking to the doctors and to the medical people now. We don't need to do that. So if we can sort of get more cohesion and work together, these are multiple solutions we can create, and we can also employ our local people a lot better.
Thank you, Peter. Could your microphone go to Neil, please, and Nicole?
Just following on from that, you're absolutely right. One of the speakers yesterday talked about most about 5% of the food that we eat is grown in the far north in Kaitaia, and you buy it from growers markets and stuff like that. But in actual fact, most probably 50 to 60% of the food we eat is actually grown in the far north, but it goes out of town and back again. So Australia, there's a huge amount of opportunities because the stuff is growing here and stopping it going out and just making it stay in the circuit, and we might get better quality because we can influence the people that grow it as well.
Thank you, Cliff. Nicole?
You were mentioning how people drive their houses and what sort of habits they have and how you might want to change those. I was wondering if you considered metering systems as part of the solution for that. There's a really interesting program I'd be more than happy to talk to you about in Woodstock, Ontario, which combined a prepayment metering system with instant feedback. So to give you a sense of why you would want to do this, imagine if we bought our groceries the way we buy electricity. You go to the store, there's no prices on anything, you put anything you want in the cart, and 2 months later they send you a bill for 2 months worth of consumption. If your bill was too high, what would you do about it? You wouldn't have any information as to how to cut back on your consumption because you don't know what were the expensive things in that cart. That's what we do with power. You give people feedback, put a meter in their kitchen that's really readable, give them instant feedback so that they can tell every time they use power, they can instantly see what effect that had and how fast their meter started spinning. And when they did this in Woodstock, they dropped consumption by 30% in the absence of any loans, any information, just because they made people into active consumers. So you got rid of the whole learned helplessness thing that you were talking about. Give people the information and they will take charge of their own consumption. It's a bit like how you drive a Prius. A Prius has a meter that tells you what every act of driving just did to your gas consumption. People who drive Priuses drive like little old ladies because they put the gas in the car, they have the power to spin that gas out for as long as possible. So it's an incredibly empowering thing. This is real smart metering. Not smart as in high tech, smart as in working with the psychological drivers that move people and that actually change behavior. So I'm interested in whether you've considered metering systems like that as part of your solution.
Thank you. You've absolutely nailed it. Up to 20% of energy use can be saved through no loss of services, through just switch off and smart activities. And as part of that whole of house package that we've talked about, some kind of metering which provides that feedback to support information and behavioural change is in the mix. Thank you.
Neil?
Hi. It's so powerful, everybody in the room talking. What I'm hearing and what I heard yesterday there was 15% of local youth unemployed. Ruben identified it as one of the problems, or one of the challenges, one of the potentials. Everybody in the room talking, and now I'm hearing the housing. Housing is a challenge. We're going to do something about the housing. We've got lots of people unemployed. All right? So let me just take you out over to Brazil. There's a city there called Curitiba. Curitiba, third world country in the 70s. And a creative person became mayor there in about 72. And they had a problem. They couldn't, third world, they had these slums, and they couldn't get their waste trucks down the alleyways to clear it up. So what they did is they got a piece of paper and they gave it to the kids to run down to the end of the alley, bring the rubbish back, sort it out. And you know what they did? They didn't give millions of dollars to them. They gave them a piece of paper which says you could have a ticket for a bus ride into town. That's how they thought. And in the 90s, they got an award from the United Nations for the most environmental city in the world. And lots of city planners go there to find out how they did it. And one of the ways they did it was they had local currency. That was a local currency. You needed a piece of paper, like the $100 bill that Ken was talking about, to go round. So maybe we don't need those millions. We need to start with what we've got. Let's keep talking.
Thank you, Neil.
I just want to say that's about $150 for those kinds of meters, and the idea is that you basically
you engage the children to do the energy policing for you. You cut them in by giving them 10% of the savings.
Thank you. John?
Technologically challenged here. Just a point I'd like to make, this is obviously one of the most important sessions for the people here today, the feedback, the activity, people getting involved with the conversation. And it's what we found with any transition town operation we've had, talking about building houses, warmth, heating, that sort of thing. Has always been the biggest turnout of people for any of our operations. One thing that I've come to realise though is that to do this, you've got to have the proper tools. And you were talking about this before. Now, having the kids healthy by getting to the homes first, I believe is back front, because you're still working with dysfunctional tools. The dysfunctional tools you're working with are the present financial system. Now, I've been looking at this for many years now. I was very much of the idea that it was about getting hands in the dirt, doing it. That was the important thing. I've slowly come to the conclusion that the most single important thing we can do is change the dysfunctional monetary system, which will then give us the tools to make everything else go a hell of a lot easier. I think that's an important point.
Thank you, John. Now,
two things, of course, is healthy housing and the cost of housing, because the cost of housing in New Zealand is crippling, in my experience. It's just too damned expensive, and we have to change that. I don't know, community-owned trusts that build their own brand new healthy housing, but how do you build against the Fletcher Challenge kind of model and the monopoly they have over local authority planning decisions that you have to build like that? What about a competition, the $40,000 house competition, that you could have an experimental lot here, get the designs in from all over the world and get local people to build them, and people will come from all over the place to come and visit them and see these houses. What hasn't been mentioned in the technology is passive solar design, so you don't need to heat your house. There's houses I visited here in the far north and there's no heating and it's warm day and night, same as at the Rocky Mountain Institute, isn't it, Norman, up there where it can frost all year round, very cold climate. They're growing mangoes because they use NASA technology not to let any of that heat out, although I like a little more air in my house. But you can make your own. I've got we put on display an architecturally designed warm wall, Trom wall, which just is a passive solar heat collector blowing 45 degrees of warm fresh air through a house in autumn and winter, dries the house out, but you could build them out of aluminium cans painted black, or I'm sure Seabeck will knock them out by lunchtime tomorrow. But yeah.
Thank you, Lawrence. John?
Yes, thank you. Somewhere in Canada, and our lovely friend here might be able to clarify this, is a town that they formed a trust. They, I don't know if they use alternative finance, I would imagine they probably do, but they buy up old properties, they do them up, and for a deposit as low as $3,000, they allow families to move into those homes. There's a very, very low and easy repayment system. There's only one prerequisite, and that is if and when the families ever decide to sell, they have to sell back to the trust. That's one point. And just to wind up, I'd just like to say that there's more gold coming out of this room than is buried beneath us. And what I would very much appreciate is if the various panels that we've experienced and we're going to experience for the rest of the day could get together and form one panel that could visit little places like Russell, where I come from, because there's so much has come out here. I'm the only representative from Russell, and I can't take this all back to all the people that need to hear it. Could you do that, please? Thank you.
Thank you, John.